Michael Chandler is going to fight Charles Do Bronx Oliveira for the UFC Lightweight Championship at UFC 262 on May 15th. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. UFC has finally acknowledged that Khabib Nurmagomedov is retired. He's not coming back, and they're setting up Chandler versus Do Bronx for May for the vacant strap. Huge news breaking tonight, boys. What's your initial reaction? Is the right matchup? I want to know those two things for both of you. So let's start, Ant, start with you. You think this is the right fight to make, and what's your reaction to the fact we're going to get a lightweight title fight in just a couple months here?
Well, first, let's just acknowledge that they finally have moved on from Khabib Nurmagomedov. I mean, if him making very clear statements in the cage after his win over Justin Gaethje and in the media and multiple sources all over the world, he has said, I am retired. I'm not coming back. So finally, someone decided to listen, and I'm thankful for that. Now, as far as this matchup is concerned, Michael Chandler versus Charles Oliveira is not the fight to make for the belt, in my opinion. Fantastic fight, as pretty much any combination of lightweight fighters will be. But I think this doesn't feel right without Dustin Poirier fighting for this title. What that says to me is that Poirier versus Conor 3 is in the works. So either way, we're going to get some movement on the belt that makes sense with people that are, deserving of title shots, because you can't count out Oliveira. He's done everything he needs, in my opinion, to be fighting for a strap. And Michael Chandler, while he could have more wins in the UFC under his belt, man's red hot right now. He has a stellar resume. Might as well let him get the shot too.
Okay, interesting take. Drake, you agree with that, or do you feel like it's the right fight to make?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit difficult to disagree with everything Ant was laying down right there. And, just as for my initial reaction to this, it was surprising, mostly for the fact that, oh, wow, I felt like they would never leave Khabib alone. It got to this point where it was like just going on for so long, and he was just like, very, obviously kind of putting his foot down and like, no, man, I'm sticking to this. He just wouldn't be left alone. And I really had no idea when this day would come that they would finally accept it. But here we are. So I didn't see that coming. That was the biggest surprise to me. And then, of course, yeah, fairly shocking to see that, they did leave out Poirier and, give it to Chandler in his second UFC fight. That does seem pretty crazy, but I'm not at all mad at this. Of course, any matchup you put together is going to be great here. But it is surprising also the fact that, we assumed, well, they might as well just do Poirier and McGregor 3 for the belt, as silly as that probably would be on the Conor side of things. But then, in terms of business, Pat, that is a smart move to have Conor in a title fight, any situation, right? But as for what I think makes the most logical sense in just terms of meritocracy, deserved title shots and all that, it would probably be, Poirier versus Oliveira is the absolute right move to go right there. But if there was a second option, I guess, yeah, it would be Chandler versus, Oliveira. So I'm just happy that Mr. Charlie Olives is getting his rightfully deserved title shot here. That is the biggest part of this for me, because Poirier, clearly he didn't, care as much as he could have about getting the title shot next. He said, let these guys fight for it in the meantime. He wasn't as adamant about getting it next as Oliveira, who rightfully has earned it anyway. So nothing wrong with this whatsoever. It'll be an amazing fight, and I cannot wait to see it and what this means for the rest of everybody else in the division.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie Olives had to be a part of this equation, right? I mean, the guy's on the longest win streak in the division. He's just came off of a fantastic performance against Tony Ferguson. You had to give him a crack at the belt from a meritocratic standpoint. So I am also very glad he is part of the equation. In terms of the other side of that, I'm not really upset Poirier isn't a part of this, simply because from a business standpoint, right? Poirier's been pretty adamant that he wants McGregor or a Nate Diaz. He wants a money fight. And so I'm assuming at this point, he probably turned down a shot at Oliveira for the belt instead to follow one of those two fights, which makes way more sense for him financially. In terms of having the belt for Poirier or McGregor, I think that this gives the opportunity to move the division along, and you don't risk, depending especially on what Poirier and Conor's contracts say, right? Like, you can hypothetically say, well, look, like, both of you are going to get pay-per-view points, but you're not going to get the championship bonus and all that stuff, and hold up the division so that if Conor decides to wait another, year or so to fight, you don't have a champion who's not there. And Poirier, if he wants a break after fighting so recently, he doesn't have to do it right away. So I'm okay with all that. I think Chandler makes sense. You could have also done Gaethje against Oliveira. I would have been okay with that as well, since Gaethje's only loss was to Nurmagomedov, who has pretty much beat everyone except Chandler and Oliveira. But I'm totally fine with Chandler getting the crack. He is a former champion. He did come in, make a splash with that Dan Hooker KO. So I'm excited about it. And yeah, I don't think it's the wrong matchup. I don't know that there's a better one out there, maybe, but I think it makes sense to do this one. So,
yeah, I mean, I think it's a way to maximize your big fight. So you're gonna have the big, Chandler and Oliveira fight that should have some spice to it for obvious reasons. But then you preserve Dustin and Conor as its own trilogy. That's going to be its own separate main event, presumably. And then the winner of that can fight for the title next, or wherever Gaethje fits into that equation. He's there as well, but you can put the winner into the next title fight, and the loser maybe can fight Nate Diaz. And whether it be Conor or Dustin, that doesn't get the W in their next fight, well, Nate Diaz has been popping off at both of you, so it makes sense for him to re-enter competition against one of those two names. So I think they've just tried to find a way to maximize the number of big fights that they can put together with this mix up of names that no matter how you put them together, it would be exciting for knuckleheads like us who just love this sort of stuff, and for the hardcore fans. But you can, I guess, stretch it out and, get maximum product for the same bits of ingredients here.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty good and important thing to kind of point out, Ant, because, like we were talking about with Matt a couple days ago, how they have kind of bunched together so many title fights here in this current stretch of the schedule and the calendar that, like, it's going to leave some very interesting openings for main events and probably force quick turnarounds for some of these champions, because, very rare that we see, pay-per-views specifically headlined by non-title fights. But now this leaves an opening for, of course, that one that already has done that earlier in this year. And especially with what we counted 9 or 10 champions or like title fights happening in this stretch of like 2.5 months, like something ridiculous, where normally that's spread out a lot more, but we're getting 3 title fight cards, 2 of them within the span of like 2 months. Like, we didn't predict that at all, Pat, like we didn't see this coming whatsoever when we talked about that. But now they've just really not thinking far out, it seems, in terms of, the headlining fights and the champions specifically, just trying to get everybody to compete as soon as possible, giving them opportunities quicker. But then, with how this booking lines up, it kind of looks to see, all right, maybe they will go with that route, of course. Why wouldn't you make that trilogy fight a headlining fight, and give some space to, maybe these champions that will be competing here soon or already just recently competed to get back in there and make up for what could be like a disastrous gap where they're not really sure who to put on the main event of some of these pay-per-views coming up during the summertime, which is a big time for them to do that.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how the promotion copes with the championship schedule, especially depending on injuries and champions wanting to sign particular fights. I mean, in the midst of all this too, on the business side, a huge factor is that Endeavor today announced that they are going to be filing for an IPO again, which, depending on when that hits, will be a very big deal, and they'll want a lot of strong revenue going into the quarters before that stock becomes public. And then you also have August 18th being the date that the UFC can officially be spun off into an IPO if one of the partners that currently own it opt to do it. So a lot of crazy moving parts on the business side. And I would imagine you're going to get a Conor fight at some point in the summer or later. And they probably, I wouldn't also be shocked if that's already booked and they're just not telling anybody, right? Basically, they've talked to Conor and they said, yep, that's when we're doing it. And it's just being kept hush hush right now. So who knows where this will all go, but either way, crazy string of announcements. And this one, making UFC 262 a very big deal with that title fight. Let us know in the comments if you think this is the right fight to be made with everybody in the mix. Do you want to see Conor versus Dustin 3? Do you think it should be Chandler versus Oliveira? What do you do with Gaethje now that he's kind of the odd man out here? Let us know your thoughts on all that. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, little bell notification. With that in mind, anything to wrap this one up, boys?
No, I'm good.
No.
I was gonna add. Yeah. I was gonna add. Do you guys think that this fight alone will be good enough to be built around, or will they add something else really big to this card?
I think they'll add something else big to this card. It's Chandler and Do Bronx is exciting for us as diehard fight guys, but maybe it doesn't ring as much to the casual. Although you hope that Chandler still has some of that rub from the big knockout on the Conor Dustin card. So you hope that's there, but I think they're going to hedge their bets on that. They're clearly promoting the hell out of Michael Chandler. And that's one thing that we are pretty sure they're going to be leaning on, but at the same time, hedge your bets and put another big fight on this card. And especially now, I mean, we're still, in this pandemic, we're still in an era where fights get canceled all of the time for a variety of reasons, on top of the variety of reasons that they were canceled a lot in the first place. So it just makes sense to have another noteworthy fight on this card. And in fact, maybe if you can talk Gaethje into fighting someone else, off the top of my head, I wouldn't know who that would be. But if you had Gaethje on this card, I mean, I can take a look at the rankings and really quickly and
do
see.
Gaethje Makhachev.
Ooh,
there you go.
Wow.
There you go. So you can throw something like that on here, or Gaethje Dos Anjos, something like, you can throw something like that on this card, and maybe that's going to be an extra hook. But they are definitely trying their best to put Michael Chandler over. The only thing that confuses me, I thought that they would hold back Chandler's fight until February. So remember, like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Stay tuned to the Body Lock.